There is a darkness that waits in the shadow of life, monstrous, hungering, and eternal in its pursuit of satisfaction. It is unkillable by light, love, or even hope. Yet it is chained far below the tides of a land shrouded in mist, awash in bloodshed never-ending. But this is not the beginning of this story. We start with a beacon of light, cutting through the darkness of a moonless night. It is a ship with two brilliant white sails against the starlight. It is an exploratory vessel from the far-off land of Phaedra. On board, 5 individuals hurled towards dangers they could not begin to fathom. The adventure begins with the bumbling chef Mortimer waking 4 men for watch. In general, Mortimer is a mess of an individual. It seems for him, above all others, that nothing can go right, except for his cooking. Mortimer is an excellent chef. As Gabi, Laurus, Giovanni, and Eros walk onto the deck of the ship, they see Marius. The 5 men talk about life and adventure. However, soon, a storm begins to blow in out of nowhere. Red lightning arcs across the sky. From below, a massive shape appears, the serpent that had haunted Marius' nightmares for more than a decade. The serpent rears back and slams into the deck of the ship. The 5 individuals were thrown from the wreckage. They watched as the monster devoured their ship. For a second, it seemed like the beast would eat them too. Then Marius noticed something. The creature was staring right at Giovanni. It sank below the waves without finishing them off. However, they were adrift amongst the waves with sharks circling. Through much hardship, they survived the night. In the morning, they see an island in the distance. It is surrounded in mist. When it's already too late, the adventurers realize that this island is pulling them in, like it's hungry or alive. Upon arriving at the beach, Giovanni sets off to get firewood, begins chopping into the trees and discovers that they bleed. Human blood. Very quickly, the party begins to understand the horror of their situation. This island might be alive and conscious. And if it is alive, they hypothesize it could be hungry. They decide to undertake an expedition inland. As they progress deeper in, they hear a scream. Running to the source, they find a deckhand being slain by a Sahagwan. These evil fish people tend to live in the depths. Then, from the trees, sturge, massive bloodthirsty creatures, descend on the party. The fight is difficult. Laurus and Eros begin slinging spells everywhere. Gabi showed his accuracy with a short bow, and Giovanni with a long bow. Marius, on the other hand, drew his family's ancestral sword. This sword is Reaper. It's a red-tinted blade, and constantly surrounded by a black, swirling shadow. Marius swung his sword twice, and killed 2 Sahagwan. It was then the party realized the capability of their captain. As the party were surveying the remains of their battle, they heard a clapping. A gray tiefling emerged out of the underbrush. This boisterous gray tiefling, with horns that had been shaved off, said that his name was Drexel. After a bit of conversation, him and the party reached at least an alliance, if not a friendship. He took them back to his abode, an abandoned treehouse. Climbing up inside, the party were able to see many old books and tablets written in a variety of languages. As they sat there eating, Drexel noted how it had been a while since he'd seen a goblin. Gabi asked why, and then Drexel told him of the goblin genocide, perpetrated by the Ferric Empire. Gabi, not hearing of the Ferric Empire, asked, "What is this empire?" And then Drexel told him. The Ferric Empire, he said, is the empire that rules most of the world at this point, an invading force dominated by military strength and conquest. They serve the 3 gods, the Trinity they call them. And this empire, notes Drexel, does not like what they deem as weak races. Elves they take as slaves. Orcs, as well, slaves, but the goblins they did away with entirely. It ended during the fall of the great city of Impheral, some few hundred years back. Gabi is devastated by this, thinking perhaps he is the last survivor of a race long gone, and maybe his family, the people he came from, are really no more. The party then asks Drexel about himself, and Drexel is open, stating his motivation. If he were to get off this island, he would make it so that this world wouldn't be discriminatory anymore. As a tiefling, he was hated, having an infernal heritage tied to devils. And Drexel notes that he wants an even playing field for everyone. He wants to change the world. The party accept his philosophy, and they get along. They then ask if Drexel has a plan to escape this island, and Drexel says actually yes. He does have a way, but he's never been able to do it. They have to get an item called the Horn of Seven Dooms. It is located at a watchtower. They go, get the horn, and head to an abandoned temple. This temple is the source of power in this island. Its ability to draw things in, Drexel says. If they blow the horn in the right room, it will release the magic in this island. He then notes that the Sahagwin have many captured ships that have landed on this island. If they were able to then go from the temple into the camp, they could steal a ship and make their escape, leaving this island forever. Later on, the next day, they head to the abandoned watchtower, which is in the center of a lake made of acid. The party begins to chop down trees trying to create a bridge, but the Sahagwin are alerted. Drexel fends off the enemies, allowing the party to make their inside before running himself. They fight their way up the tower through many traps and dangers. Along the way, they keep seeing a symbol, though. 3 vertical lines in a circle. It's on armor, weapons, walls, even in the middle of arcane runes. They gather it's important, but they don't know what the symbol is. Eventually, they fight the Guardian that protects the horn. Many of the party were gravely injured, but eventually they find victory. Finally, they enter into the room containing the Horn of Seven Dooms, in a room known as the Vault of Ice. This room is covered in frost. Party members can see their breath. Ghosts float around the room. At the center of the room floats a horn made of black, cracked metal. This is indeed the Horn of Seven Dooms, and there are words etched into the ground below the horn. By 7 hands, 7 dooms come in 7 moments. Giovanni sees into the new dimension, the 4th dimension, and as he looks, he sees 3 great tentacles stretching from the walls. They hold up the horn, and Giovanni also hears breathing. Eventually, they take this horn, and the island immediately reacts. The tower shakes, and then falls into the lake of acid. Gabi falls into the lake of acid and nearly dies, but Marius saves him, and they escape onto land. The party heads back to Drexel's tower for the night to rest before heading to the temple. After hours of traveling the next morning, the party reaches the ruins. They are amongst many twisted and odd trees that are both alive and dead. Many of the structures are overgrown with barnacles. Coral breaks through the cobblestone ground. Laurus feels in his very core that the area is unbalanced. Like the base covenants of the universe are bent, if not fractured here. And he alerts the party. Walking around, the party also notices that some of the buildings have a glittering sheen to them. Upon further investigation, there are gold flecks on most, if not all, of these buildings. All of these buildings at one point, they surmise, were covered in gold. This was once a thriving civilization, now fallen. They pass by an entire tower made of mithril. And they continue. Eventually, they reach the temple, which is a temple of Tyr, the god of law and justice. It is seemingly untouched by the corruption, made of marble with veins of platinum running through. At the center of the temple is a giant statue of Tyr, but there is a hole in the temple. From the hole, black obsidian seems to pour. The obsidian seems to be eating the temple from below. Drexel says that this hole leads to what they seek. A great ghost appeared then, before the party. They seemed human, dressed in half-plate armor, wearing a crown. In one hand they wielded a great battle axe. A half-cape hangs from one of the shoulders of this individual, with that same symbol, 3 vertical lines inside a circle. This ghost is raving in a foreign language, and as the party entered inside, the ghost seemed to hurl a ball of fire at them. But the flames did not touch the party. They were safe. The ghost could not harm them. However, Drexel was hurt by such a flame. He explained that the ghost can hurt him, and that for some reason, the party isn't hurt by this ghost. He gives them specific directions on where to blow the horn, and so that they may enter. He then says goodbye to the party and wishes them luck, as despite the ghost raving, anger and fury, they descend down below the temple. As they progress through this underground temple, they encountered the true purpose of this temple, a prison for many of the elder evils of the universe. They encountered Yachak, the purple flame, and Eros made a bid for power with this entity. Eros took a violet flame in a jar, and Yachak promised that if he releases this flame in the outside world beyond the bounds of the temple, he would grant him any wish he desired. And to this, Eros agreed. In another room, they met Kazef, the Chaos Hound, a hungering beast. It threatened Giovanni specifically, called him a hunter, berated him, and hated him. Giovanni did not know why, but the creature, the Chaos Hound, swore he would hunt Giovanni and take the horn from him. They then found Entropus, a stillborn god. Evil, pulsating with necrotic energy. They left the creature. And with each evil, the party grew more uneasy. And then suddenly, some began to see a yellow sign. They followed it into a throne room. The throne room of the King in Yellow. He sat on a golden throne, wrapped in golden clothes. The king introduced himself as Hastur, and as he did so, the party began to notice tentacles beginning to emerge from the sides of the room and from underneath his very clothes. Then, the King in Yellow turned to each member, began to speak. To Eros he said, "You smell like my old master, the Elder Emperor. His wrath saved and destroyed the world." To Gabi, he looked and squinted. "You seek a future that can never be. Each step brings closer the oppressive truth you already know. You've known it all your life." To Giovanni, he looks. "Forgotten lord of the half-fey land, you walk along your subjects begging for salvation. Your cruelty is pungent to my nose. Soon, you will learn the extent of your own failings." To Laris, the king now turned and said, "Slave of law, you are but a pawn, useless in your own desires, a gull in opposition to the hurricane of fate. Your life never really began. In truth, you have no more control than a child's toy." And finally, he looked to Marius. "Last of the Baccaras, your twisted heart, molded by your past, has brought you here. Upon your soul you hold the deaths of your crew. All that happens was set into motion by you. Your own greed, your need for vengeance, dooms all. I name you Scion of War, Marius Baccara. You are the spark, the match, and the first bullet. By your hand is the fallen, perhaps... the rebirth." And at this point, Hastur became confused. "What sway do you have on the strands of fate? For the first time, I do not understand you, mortal." After a brief conversation with the creature, the party decides it's time to flee. But Hastur wants the horn. And he won't let them go. At least, not without a mark. Hastur reaches out his hand and marks Laris with his sign. Eventually, the group reaches the room Drexel told them to reach. The room is made out of black stone, with a tinge of green. A blue light fills this chamber. The far end of the room has a door with a giant blue arcane seal. An altar sits in the middle of the room with a book on it. The book is made of flesh, the words of the title written in blood, and the language deep speech, a long-forgotten language that, surprisingly, Giovanni knows. And he translates the book, the Swallower of Worlds, as centipedes scurry across the ground in the thousands. The party smells a carcass of a dying whale here in this chamber. And stranger still, pearls with a green tint lay scattered across the ground. The party looks to each other and agree to complete their mission and blow the Horn of Seven Dooms. Deep magics come alive, and the party receives a vision. They see a massive wave rolling across the ocean. Cities are toppled into the sea. Sahagwin rise from the ocean and butcher all who oppose them. Drexel sits upon a throne of silver and salt. He wears the crown of a king, but his hands are stained with blood. The sun turns green, the world cracks in two, and the party feels a force greater than themselves begin to manifest. They see a massive creature, a mass of tentacles, mandibles, and eyes swirling about them, and it is this moment as the creature begins to attack that Eros' missing eye begins to flash. It begins to billow green flame, and the green flame surrounds the party, and then there is nothing. Nothing remains but darkness in this room. And then the entire island begins to shake. Soon, everything stops, but a terrible feeling of dread has swept across the party at this point. They run out of the temple and are greeted by Drexel. Drexel has, of course, betrayed them. They have released an evil that they do not yet comprehend. And they cry out, "Why have you betrayed us?" And Drexel retorts, "He did not betray the party. He is getting them off the island. Through the power of Halashner, his master, he can now get everything he ever wanted. The first seal is broken." And then he gives a warning. In 1 month, there will be an eclipse. After that, the civilization to the east will be reborn anew. Do not be at the spines when the eclipse takes place. Before leaving, Drexel asks Eros for the purple flame. He doesn't want to leave it at the temple. There is a standoff. Eros wants his wish, but eventually the party talks him down. They cannot hope to face Drexel. He's more now. More than they ever realized. So Eros puts the flame down. Drexel goes, grabs a hold of it, and opens the jar. And as he does, he raises his shirt to reveal a second huge maw embedded into his skin. The maw opens and eats Eros' purple flame. Drexel is emboldened by this new power and leaves the party, stunned. After regrouping, the party agrees that they have to get off this island and warn people about Drexel and whatever he could be planning. And as they run to the Sahagwin village, where a ship and the promise of escape wait, the island continues to quake uncontrollably. The mist begins to break and twist. The trees crack and break all around them. The foliage comes alive as blighted, plant-like humans attack. Surrounded, and with no way out, the party fights for their very lives. As more and more blood falls onto the ground, it pools and eventually becomes an eldritch abomination. They defeat their enemies, bloodied and battered and on the verge of collapse. Yet, they keep going. The island feels like it's breaking apart. They cross a mountain and finally reach the Sahagwin village, ready for a fight. When they arrive, however, they find only carnage. Drexel single-handedly annihilated the village. The bodies of 24 Sahagwin lie dead. In a cage, they find their old friend Mortimer. The Sahagwin were using him as their new chef. Mortimer relays what he saw and points to Drexel's ship leaving on the horizon. The party heads to the docks and finds a ship by the name of the Raven. It is in disrepair, but is outfitted with many arcane rooms and weapons. With Mary as his captain once again, the group sails east, following Drexel, their goal to stop his evil machinations before it is too late. And here we find the end of Arc 1 of Goetic Tides.